Number 1. A pope put his dead predecessor on trial. You think modern political drama is wild, you have no idea. Let me introduce you to Pope Stephen VI and his wonderfully named predecessor, Pope Formosus. These two did not get along, mainly because Stephen VI believed Formosus was illegitimate in practically every way. And what do you do if you don't like someone and happen to be the Pope? In the year 897, Pope Stephen actually had the corpse of Pope Formosus exhumed, dressed it in full papal regalia, sat the decaying body on a throne, and launched what history now calls the cadaver synod. Stephen had a deacon speak on the corpse's behalf and basically turned the whole thing into a kind of live puppet show. Imagine a dead pope marionette as a witness. That's the level of courtroom drama we're talking about. Formosus was accused of perjury and violating church law and, surprise, was found guilty. And in case you're wondering what happens to a convicted corpse in the 9th century, no, they didn't just toss him in jail or something. Instead, they stripped off the papal garments, chopped off the fingers he had used to bless people, and threw the body into the Tiber River. But it gets better. The people of Rome were not thrilled with this move. They thought it was a bit much, even by medieval standards. Shortly after the trial, Pope Stephen VI was thrown into prison and then strangled. Number 2. The Puritans banned Christmas. Ah, the Puritans, those delightful folks who thought fun was the devil's work. In their quest to drain the joy from every aspect of life, they came to a very logical conclusion. Christmas had to go. Yes, back in 1659, the Puritans of the Massachusetts Bay Colony outright banned Christmas. They didn't just discourage it, they legally forbade anyone from celebrating it. Forget decking the halls or having a festive meal. If you so much as said Merry Christmas, you were hit with a fine of 5 shillings. But why, you ask? The Puritans thought that Christmas was basically a pagan festival, disguised as a Christian one, which, in fairness, is kind of true. The date of December 25th was picked to overlap with various winter solstice festivities, like the Roman holiday of Saturnalia, where people drank, partied, or had one of the famous orgies of ancient Rome. In other words, it wasn't exactly holy. The Puritans saw people having a good time and said, absolutely not. They wanted to focus on hard work, solemn prayer, and the kind of existential dread that only 17th century New England could provide. For them, Christmas was an abomination, and they were determined to stomp it out. The ban lasted for over 20 years, until the monarchy regained control in England and basically told the colonists to chill out and let people have their eggnog. So, next time you complain about the commercialization of Christmas, just remember, it could be worse. At least you don't get fined for wishing someone a Merry Christmas. Number 3. The US tried killing Fidel Castro with deadly cigars. Of course, no list of bizarre history would be complete without the United States' wild obsession with getting rid of Fidel Castro. Now, if you've heard of the CIA's many assassination attempts, you probably know that subtlety was not their strong suit, but nothing quite compares to the time they considered taking Castro out with an exploding cigar. This was the early 1960s, and the CIA was brainstorming ways to get rid of Castro, mostly because he was a communist just 90 miles from Florida, and that was apparently a huge buzzkill. Among their many insane ideas, like using poisoned wetsuits or infecting him with botulism, the exploding cigar plan was an all-time low in high-stakes cartoon villainy. The plan was exactly what it sounds like. Plant an exploding cigar among Castro's personal stash, wait for him to light it up, and boom, no more Castro. Needless to say, this plan never came to fruition because someone realized that giving a world leader a cigar that literally explodes while visiting the United Nations might be a little hard to pull off without, consequences. So, the exploding cigar joined the long list of hilariously bad ideas, and Fidel Castro lived on, outliving 9 US presidents and presumably enjoying his cigars in peace. However, due to the rumor about this assassination attempt spreading, the Cohiba cigar brand was founded by Castro's security in order to produce secure cigars. By the way, if you want to know more about crazy assassination attempts on Fidel Castro, then check out my full-length video about it on my channel. But for now, let's continue with the video. Number 4. Einstein's brain was stolen and lost for decades. Now, let's talk about Albert Einstein. You know him, but did you know that after he died, his brain was stolen? Yep, someone literally took Einstein's brain and went on what can only be described as the world's strangest road trip. Einstein died in 1955, and within hours, his brain was swiped by a pathologist named Dr. Thomas Stoltz Harvey. Harvey was supposed to conduct a routine autopsy, but instead, he decided to remove Einstein's brain, presumably because he thought, hey, maybe I can figure out what makes a genius tick. Harvey didn't exactly ask anyone for permission to do this, so when Einstein's family found out, they were understandably upset. Harvey convinced them that it was all in the name of science, and for some reason, they let him keep it. What followed was an absurd journey. Harvey cut the brain into 240 pieces, stored them in jars filled with formaldehyde, and for the next several decades, just carted them around. For a while, Harvey worked at a hospital in Wichita, Kansas, where he kept pieces of Einstein's brain in a cider box under a beer cooler. Later, he lost his medical license, got divorced, and ended up living in the Midwest with his collection of brain bits. It wasn't until 1998, over 40 years later, that Harvey finally gave what was left of Einstein's brain to a pathologist in Princeton, New Jersey. So, the next time you think about the legacy of one of the greatest minds in human history, remember that part of that legacy involved his brain going on a bizarre cross-country trip with a guy who lost his medical license. Number 5. Ben Franklin did electrocute himself, but not using his famous kite. When people think of Benjamin Franklin and electricity, they usually think of the kite experiment. You know, the one where he flies a kite in a thunderstorm and somehow doesn't die. He did all kinds of weird experiments, and at least once he severely electrocuted himself. This wasn't during the famous kite experiment. No, this particular moment of shock and awe came when Franklin was experimenting with what he called an electrical turkey. He was trying to use electricity to humanely kill turkeys for a Christmas feast, because apparently electrocution was the most humane method he could think of. Anyway, one day, Franklin got a little too comfortable with his turkey zapping setup. While demonstrating his electrical prowess to some dinner guests, he accidentally grabbed the wires and got a full blast of electricity. The jolt knocked him flat on his back, stunned him for several minutes, and, in his own words, occasioned a violent, quick motion of every muscle in my body. In other words, Ben Franklin tased himself with 18th century tech in front of a horrified audience. But hey, he still got up, served dinner, and lived to be one of the founding fathers. So, the moral of the story here is that if you accidentally electrocute yourself, just roll with it. Maybe one day, you too can help write the Declaration of Independence and get your face on the $100 bill. Thanks for watching. See the video on your screen? Well, YouTube thinks this one might interest you as well, so go ahead and check it out if you like.